Welcome to the Commerce Tomorrow podcast, your one stop to learn about the technology that's powering the future of commerce. Here are your hosts, Dirk and Kelly.
Welcome to an episode of the Commerce Tomorrow podcast. Here with Kelly.
Hi, this is Dirk. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening in.
And today we're here with John Panella. Very excited to have him. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. This is John Panella. I'm Group Vice President of Commerce Strategy at SapientRazorfish. Been there about 15, coming up on 16 years, and really drive our go-to-market around all of the commerce platforms where we play widely in the space with just about everyone that's out there.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us. The reason we had you is because you have your fingers in just about everything. You know everyone. You know what hundreds of customers are doing, and excited to draw on your experience for the podcast.
No, I appreciate being here.
Thanks again.
I think before we jump in, we are recording right now from Las Vegas as we are all attending the Shop Talk conference. How is it so far for you? Anything special that you have seen today? Any sessions you attended?
No, so far I've seen decent traffic. I think it's certainly much busier than last year, but a larger location has made it a bit easier. The best sessions I've seen have been focused on in-store. To be honest, those are the ones that I've gotten the most value out of, just that full omni-channel customer experience and how folks are leveraging some of the new technologies there.
And what types of technologies are you actually seeing customers implement at this point? Because there's a lot of hype. And, there was a great keynote with Macy's and, and there are a lot of things that look to me like vaporware, with no offense to Macy's, right? It looks to me like a cutting edge vendor put together a free demo and an executive wanted to get up on stage and speak about how cool they are. But what are you actually seeing customers do today that's kind of interesting and different than, say, 2 years ago?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question because I think, we can talk about VR and AR and all those things all we want, but they don't have traction yet. I think they do have potential in this space. Certainly in retail, there's opportunity for those to do things. I've been spending some time with a professor at the University of North Texas who's focused on the idea of measuring and how to make clothing fit even better. Obviously, we've talked to the True Fit folks and others around what they're doing in that space. And I see opportunity, but what folks are doing that feels like successfully to me is how they're extending the store experience to be, whether it be extended aisle, whether it be clienteling, really making that more engaging around what's happening in the store. Not really jumping into these bold technologies that are all great, but actually just it's about that association with a customer. It's more associates in store. It's more knowledge of that person when they walk in the store, how to interact with them. The only other thing I'll put out there is I do see IoT starting to get some traction. And I think that's a very interesting space with recurring orders by CPGs and brands. I think there is definitely some traction there also.
Talking about in-store, everybody's talking now about Amazon Go. Do you also see the trend beside Amazon that we might move to cashierless stores and everything is more focusing on consulting within the store, on supporting the customer on the purchase and getting rid of the whole kind of waiting in line for paying your products before you move out kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's an approach that makes a lot of sense right now. I mean, we're seeing it in some of our grocery customers of more and more of trying to assist them during the purchase process, trying to assist them during the pre-purchase process when they place their order online to help them through substitutions and, how do I get the right cut of meat and those types of things, and less about the interaction at checkout. So I think we'll see more of that where the experience is taking place away from the door where the person's walking away. So I absolutely see that as a trend.
A trend I've been waiting to actually hit is in-store clienteling. Yeah. So Tulip, for example, new store. Yeah. I love the concept. I've seen the demos. And my philosophy on why these platforms haven't yet taken off is because the in-store point of sale system is too difficult, the OMS is too difficult to integrate with. Why have these platforms not yet hit mainstream yet?
I think there's two reasons. I think one is absolutely the technologies you refer to. I think so many of the brick and mortar stores still have ancient technology around point of sale and being able to tie into that. But I also think it has to be the right kind of store for clienteling to be successful. We do a lot of work with one of the large pet brands. And there where you have dog training and you have grooming and you have vet, their clienteling is really catching hold because you're interacting with the person at different points in the store that are actually, quote, destinations, the pet hotel and all of those types of things. So we see that being successful. But I think just in general, the idea of clienteling, there's got to be a hook on why somebody wants to use it. And then when you've also got to overcome the technology challenges, makes it tricky.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
How big do you see the technology challenge? Talking quickly there about technology when it comes to in-store. How big are these kind of projects? So what do you think is the type of investment? Either it's on people, if it's on money, if it's on restructuring everything that you have built over the last 30, 40 years within the store, now getting to a next kind of technical level?
Yeah, I think it's less about people nowadays. I think in-store associates are becoming more digitally savvy. And so I don't think there's a big challenge of getting people to use the clienteling device and drive some of the process there. But when you still have point of sale systems that you can't even check inventory on, and the checkout method, you only have certain payment types that can be used at it, it becomes a significant challenge. So I think it's mainly technology at this point. There's a bit about organizationally how you drive that, because certainly store operations likes owning that process. And if you're going to go fully digital, where your checkouts and your point of sale are going to be part of the digital operation, there's a bit of an organizational conflict there to work through. But I don't think the people part of it's that big of a challenge anymore.
Yeah, and on the topic of organization, a barrier to speed that I've seen, right? So retailers are facing the Amazon apocalypse, and however you want to define that thing, yet most retailers are releasing to production once a month, once every 2 months, and the point of sale systems are released once every 6 months, once every year. And the way to fix that is largely by reorganizing your product teams into these small vertical teams. Some people call them microservices, but basically reducing friction between organizational boundaries by collapsing and building these small vertical teams. Are you seeing people actually do that yet?
Yeah, I mean, it amazes me. For the last 18 months, a huge part of our success has been around improving DevOps and improving the organization. The ability to be more nimble, the ability to not have to do full regression testing and roll out a complete site, or, especially when you start talking, I've got, kiosks in 900 stores, and I've got a mobile platform that also is being affected by this. So we certainly see it. Now, do we only see it right now in the leaders? The top 50 or 100 retailers? Yes. But I think you'll see it coming down pretty quickly into the next space of being able to take advantage of that and leverage the ability to be more nimble. So I absolutely think it's, I read an analyst paper the other day where it said 57% of their interviewed retailers were going to re-platform in the next 18 months.
Wow.
And I said, but what do you mean? My question was, what do you mean by re-platform?
Yeah, right.
I said, I don't believe 57% of retailers are going to go purchase another platform and go back into the same model they're in today. I think they're going to evolve, and I think they're going to start working away from it. As the term I use in all my pitches is unplatforming. The idea of really working away from it. Still some problems that have to be solved. You still got to deal with fulfillment. You still have to deal with product in such a way that it works. But I think absolutely it's the trend.
Interesting. A big trend we're seeing out there is a shift towards decomposing the monolith, right? So you've got a legacy commerce platform of some sort, and they will build and extend microservices on top of that. I'm assuming you're seeing the same thing as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely the first step. I won't plug my white paper, but I just put out a white paper not too long ago around the maturity curve of moving forward, and that's certainly the first part of the curve is the idea of starting to move away from the monolith, starting to go headless, starting to take some of those things away from it, with the final step being a full, microservice-enabled architecture. But from my perspective, I think we're seeing the leaders were about 18 months ago starting to do that. Now we're starting to see the guys in the mid-tier start just at that first point of breaking the monolith, but the guys ahead are kind of moving forward to the next phases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's a big effort, right? So you also need to attract and find the right talent to do so. I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges for most companies, finding the right people that can support them on that way. Even if they say they want to go into that direction, if they say, okay, we have the funding aside to do so, where do I find the developers and partners that can actually do that, right? So
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, we have a couple of clients who didn't take the path just for that reason at this point. To find the right resources to do that. It's easy, quote, easy enough nowadays to find people to manage a Hybris or an IBM or an Oracle platform. But to find people who can truly develop a nimble microservices platform that is extensible and is flexible and is scalable is a challenge. So, I mean, it's now, we're honestly up to about 150 folks doing this now just because the demand is so great. We have a couple dozen clients who we're doing it with at this point. And if you had asked me 2 years ago, we didn't have any.
Yeah. A challenge we've seen is a lot of these retailers specifically are older companies. Many of them are still privately owned by families. Yeah. And a lot of the top technical talent out there, right? The people who would normally live in the Bay Area and work for Google, you need a couple of those people, just a couple, right? You need 2 or 3 of them as senior architects within a traditional retailer.
Yep.
How do you make the case to somebody who says, to a CEO who says, why should I hire this 28-year-old who makes more than my CFO? Right? How do I attract that person? And how do you tell somebody that they actually do need that type of person and to justify the expense? Because the default for retailers is to say, you know what, I'm just going to spend 50 or 60,000. That's the prevailing wage here.
Yeah.
But it's a recipe for disaster. So how do you talk to somebody through about that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think most of them are starting to get that they need to do it, that it is the only option, and ask us all the time to where would we find these resources and what are the specific skills we need. But when push comes to shove, it's very hard for them to cross that line. You could tell them all day that, this is the type of skills you need. This is the type of person. Here's the kind of background you want. And by the way, it's going to cost you X. And they'll grasp it and say, okay, until they actually have to sit down and they start looking at the real impact to the rest of their organization. There's a large grocery in Canada that we do a lot of work with. And they finally took the choices. Our only way to do this successfully is to create a startup within this 5,000 person organization. They created a 50-person startup that's now a couple hundred, and said, we have to pretend we're not a retailer, we're not a grocer, we're a technology company. We're a digital company, and that's the way to approach it. I think if you don't approach it that way, the challenges are really difficult.
I see it similar, and I also saw it working a couple of times. Companies like Rewe and others are doing that quite well. But that requires a lot of commitment, right? So if C-level is not completely behind that, because it's not a 12 months kind of thing, right? No. So this is a 48 months or even longer kind of investment that you need to carry through all the time and believe into that, because otherwise, if you just apply short-term thinking to that, you might give up too early, right? So, Interesting. Maybe another topic. Let's quickly talk about mobile, because that was something that had been bothering me for the last couple of years. At every conference, everybody's talking about mobile first, mobile first, mobile first. But what everybody then is doing, they do a web shop kind of project, right? So, and now we have about, 70% internet traffic coming from mobile devices. Desktop is now the niche market. But when we look at the mainstream retailer, the mainstream brand out there, not the top ones, right? The top ones are already at 70% of their e-commerce revenues generated by mobile devices. But the majority of the market, at least from the numbers, not from the size, they do probably 20% just of revenues mobile. And their argument then is, mobile does not work so much for us. Yes, people use mobile for browsing, but they don't use mobile for purchasing, which is the wrong kind of outcome when they look at the numbers, right? It's just because they don't optimize on that kind of channel. Where do you see that now?
I think one of the hesitations of why it didn't catch on in the mainstream is, if you look at the main platform vendors, they didn't embrace that approach. And when they weren't embracing that approach, and they were the leaders in all the analyst ratings and so forth, there was a hesitance even when you got the numbers, the evaluations that the mobile traffic was driving a high percentage of the sales. I think you're seeing that change now. Certainly some of the major vendors, I'll put Salesforce out there specifically, is now going mobile first with all of their commerce solutions. And from that perspective, I think we'll see it change. But it is retailers were brick and mortar based only. They finally got over the hump of we need to have a website. We understand why we need to have a website. They got over that hump, and then to say, well, we really don't need a website. What we really need is a mobile relationship with our customer if we're really going to understand them, because that's how we'll know whether they're in store or out of store, what they're doing. And I think it's just a gradual change that hasn't happened. And honestly, because I don't know, it was embraced by a lot of, I don't want to call them niche vendors. I think they were progressive and innovative, but they weren't necessarily who was driving the market direction.
Yeah. I hope a lot of people joined in this morning when Nike was giving their session at Shop Talk. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
I also attended as well. And I was happy that everything that they have shown had been mobile. So there was no website at all anymore. Everything was mobile. Yeah. They said they built their application for scale because they have more simultaneous users on their mobile app than any kind of ticketing site has on that. And the examples that they brought, also with VR coming up, when they have the kind of an ambassador model, I would call it. So out of one purchase, they make 5 with, Nike Stash or something, they call this kind of event. And so that was impressive to see. And hopefully also now for the last retailers that did not hear the bell ringing, now they need to know where they have to move.
Yeah. I mean, certainly I'm hearing a lot more conversation at this show this year about that than I did a year ago. So, I mean, there's definitely at least a mind share shift. We'll see if it comes out in actual direction.
Besides strictly mobile devices, there are lots and lots of these new touch points that we're seeing out there, right? So things like smartwatches, IoT style devices, and those all require APIs, right? And a lot of retailers have been slow. We're starting to see some, but some of them are publishing catalogs of their APIs that third-party developers can use. And I think Best Buy and Target, I think Walmart has done this to some degree. But I haven't seen the mid-market yet do that. Why is that? Why have they not done that yet? I'm surprised.
Yeah, I have to admit I am too. I think we're far enough down the path that you see the big guys doing it successfully. That the mid-tier retailer hasn't done it to this point. I don't know if it comes back again to, they're fighting the day-to-day challenges of their existing environment, and 2 months for a release, and a month for a new mobile release, and all of those types of things that they can't focus on, the forest for the trees kind of thing. But it is surprising to me also. I've made the same comment to others around the fact that we're not seeing more of that. We go into a mid-tier retailer and they don't have any of that to offer.
Yeah, that's really surprising, disappointing. I mean, you think I think it's more that they're just surviving, and they're not able to attract the right talent. They're not able to make the right investments. And there's a big opportunity there, though. Yeah,
there absolutely is. And I mean, I guess we all have to ask the question, how much of the slowness or lack of speed in the mid-tier is just because of the challenges that retail has today.
Yeah.
We look at what's going on. I mean, I agree with the evaluation that the Toys R Us situation was not necessarily a failure of retail. It was a failure of business operations and planning.
Too much debt.
But they're not the only ones who are in that situation that have had to take a certain path because of where retail is.
Yeah, and on that topic, how are you seeing brands and retailers differentiate from Amazon? Right, I don't want to make this about Amazon, but clearly the elephant in the room here. What's your strategy for brands and retailers to break out of that trap?
Yes. So one of the first things I say is when I walk into a retailer or a brand is, if your opinion is we're going to fight Amazon tooth and nail till we succeed or we fail, that's the wrong approach. You've got to figure out where where you can differentiate from Amazon. When you're commoditized products, there's no reason not to sell those things through Amazon. There's no reason not to have a relationship with them. But where you differentiate and where you really have that lifetime relationship with a customer, you have to be able to take advantage of that. And that's where you have to draw your line in the sand, so to speak. I mean, it was interesting. I was in a lunch today and a retailer made the comment, "We're not afraid of Amazon, bring them on." And I texted it to one of my peers who's working with that client and said, "You better know that's the mindset." And to me, I just won't. If I walk in and somebody tells me that, I push back very hard, because I think there's absolutely value of Amazon, and Amazon, sure, they'd love to own the world, but they also understand they can't own the world today. And if you give them what works for them, then be successful. If you want recurring orders, you want commoditized products, you want personalized products that are really going to drive your relationship with your consumer, you should sell that yourself. When you're selling toilet paper and paper towels and cat litter, there's no reason not to sell those things through Amazon.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It absolutely does. And I'm always kind of scared when I hear people saying that I can compete on the level that Amazon does in the same kind of category, and that they would have a long time kind of chance, at least when they are the same kind of market, right? Yeah. So anyway, I think we will cover probably Amazon in some other episode a little bit, because it will be interesting what happens once Alibaba moves more into the US market and so on. Right now, everything is more regional, right? So Alibaba owns Asia, Amazon the rest of the world, but once both try to expand, I think things will be interesting.
I think the other thing that's happened with Amazon, again, not to dwell on them, but the idea of marketplaces. Yeah. I think the marketplace has gotten some momentum again. I think everybody tried it back when Staples tried it and Sears tried it and so forth, and said, we're just going to sell every single thing we can sell and take as much revenue as we can get. And now that people are being more selective in who they associate with in those marketplaces, into adjacencies, into things where they can bundle, into things that differentiate their offering, I think we're starting to see that get some traction again. And I think that's an interesting way to combat Amazon by, if I'm a pet supply company and I want to sell, all the things you need to take care of your cat, and then I associate with some others that do some things in the adjacent markets or around it. I think that's a way to potentially be successful.
Yeah, it's been remarkable how, if you look in Asia and China specifically, the marketplace is just dominant. I mean, even Amazon sells on Alibaba. It's crazy to see all of that growth. And I think we're starting to see the beginning of that here in the US with Amazon and their marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I was at another session this morning, and there was a gentleman from Brazil who was head of digital for 700 brick and mortar store company, and they went full marketplace. And yes, Brazil is obviously more conducive to that, but he said over 50% of their online sales are coming out of the marketplace.
Yeah.
That's a significant number, no doubt. And he said, and obviously they were operating those at a better margin.
On that topic, are you seeing people adopt these dropship vendors like Commerce Hub? So take an established product catalog that are your products and you ship and you fulfill, but you want to extend that and you bring in somebody like Commerce Hub where you can have them drop ship the product for you directly from manufacturer. Are you starting to see that model?
I see it in certain sub-verticals, I would say, of retail. I don't think it's appropriate everywhere, but I think, actually, I mean, it's starting to work a bit in kind of the pharmacy and health and beauty space where, I'm a health and beauty company or even a cosmetic company, and I offer a limited number of SKUs, and I want to offer the tools that you use to put the makeup on and the brushes and the wipes and all those types of things, and I don't want to sell them directly. I'll use someone to drop ship those items, and I don't have to keep them in my stock. So I think it works in certain verticals. I'm not seeing it, I wouldn't say broadly, but I think in certain niches it's definitely happening.
And we can only see so many marketplaces, right? So the space is limited, right? If everybody tries to become a platform, right? And everybody thinks about extending their SKUs by enhancing the catalog. But if everybody's doing that, it would be hard to compete on that kind of level, right?
I heard this fascinating podcast, and there was an article as well about all of these kids around the world. They're 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and they go on Shopify and they build these brand sites. And they incorporate all this fancy marketing, and they use all this great stock photography, and they end up selling products from AliExpress, and they drop ship the products. And a lot of kids out there are making a lot of money in high school.
Yeah, it's the next generation of affiliate.
Yeah. Right, so. Exactly. But it's amazing how it's primarily marketing, and then they just drop ship and I wonder how far that's going to extend, because a lot of these are just lifestyle brands when it comes down to it.
Well, and when you think about it, where they're missing the mark is potentially around the marketing.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that's the part you focus on and don't worry about the actual product fulfillment and inventory, and you're dealing with the marketing side of it, that's where you get the people into the funnel.
Let's talk a little bit about trends. There's one thing that I'm very curious about, John, as you're working with so many companies of different sizes and types together. So as voice is now on the rise, right? Mm-hmm. So voice commerce is an upcoming trend now. I recently read a report that already every fifth American consumer already placed a purchase through a voice home assistant. I'm not sure if that applies to the whole kind of market, but the survey was kind of compelling. Do you have customers or projects out there where they really try to embrace that and build commerce architectures for this?
Everyone's dabbling with it, and I would say that from big to small. Everyone wants to see how it applies. I can't put my finger on someone that said it is the trend they need to go after. But I can also say that probably 80% of the customers we're dealing with it are dabbling with it in some way or another. So it certainly has wider penetration than many of the other trends out there. I don't know if the thing I would read into that is everyone thinks it's necessary, but not necessarily revolutionary. It would probably be the way I would look at it.
And maybe depends also on the market, right? Yeah. So if it's on grocery products, just saying okay, I need more salad, or I'm out of toilet paper, is more easy than placing purchase for TV.
Yeah. It's funny, my wife and I have an Alexa at home.
It hasn't started laughing at you yet, has it?
My 6-year-old loves to get it to play obscene music, that she's not allowed to listen to normally. Maybe it's a generational thing, but my wife and I will never purchase a product through voice, right? Because we're just so used to playing on our phones, and I think it's a better user interface. But my 6-year-old, I guarantee she will have zero problems whatsoever ordering through voice. And it's just remarkable to see how younger people have embraced these technologies. And even me, I mean, I'm not that old, but it's a generational thing, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I would have no issue using an IoT situation where it was ordering for me because it looked and saw, the cat food container was empty, or the laundry detergent was empty, and that it was doing that automatically. But I have not even considered really going down the path of voice. It's not a generational fit for me. So I think there absolutely is something to that. We'll see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So seeing our kids now rising up, they will not use UI in that way as we had been used to that anymore. If they now want to order an audio play or something like that, a kid's book and so on, they just say it. It's coming. The same process for us would be 15, 20 clicks, 7 minutes, and they place a similar kind of order within 5 seconds, right? It's a different...
I guess as tech vendors, we just have to hire today's kids.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
To stay current on tech trends.
Other trends, interesting one, because I haven't seen a practical case out there. Now, since a couple of years, everybody's talking about blockchain and how this will change the payment industry. And though I see smart contracts and other things, but when it comes to payment and a real kind of B2C, for example, customer implementations, I'm running out of examples because I'm doing hard finding some.
Yeah, I struggle with that also. I agree totally. I mean, I think there's absolutely, B2B examples where blockchain makes sense. I think there are other places where it will certainly enable the payment process to be simpler. But the payment process has become so easy, whether it be Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Android Pay or whatever, or, Visa checkout. I mean, I'll be honest, that's something I hadn't set up until recently, and it's like, hey, that's pretty easy. I like that. I pay with PayPal in stores. Even when, I'm at a brick and mortar and they give me the option to pay with PayPal, I take care of it. So I'm not sure that I see the use case that differentiates it. However, from a technology perspective, it certainly will have its place.
We should have a recording again in a year, same kind of setup, and see if something has changed now than looking 12 months further, right?
Yeah. What have we missed and what have we gotten right?
We're seeing a lot, just on the topic of payments, we're seeing a lot of friction being reduced. Are you seeing a lot of contactless payments? Are you seeing Apple Pay, for example? How are you seeing that implemented? Because I love Apple Pay when I can use it, especially from the product detail page.
Yep.
And Groupon specifically, I mean, it is so simple. You just tap your thumb on the product detail page and it comes to you. What are some internal barriers to adopting that? Because today, you still have to enter your credit card in 95% of technologies.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of our clients try to find the right places to use it. I think there still are challenges and still are barriers in taking advantage of it. But for example, in store, I think we're seeing more opportunity to take advantage of that, of the touchless payment. It still surprises me when you go to McDonald's and you can pay with Apple Pay and some of those types of things that I think we're starting to see more traction. But with PIN and chip cards, to most people that transaction is so much in advance of what we had in the past and so much simpler that I don't think a lot of people necessarily see that. What's that next leap I need to be able to take advantage of truly being touchless? All I have to do is stick it in and type in a PIN.
That's the point. It's already super fast, right? And therefore, I'm also skeptical on the disruption of that.
Yeah.
I'm with contactless payments. I'm with you that this might be another improvement. But when I look at payments through the app, so let's take the Starbucks example, right? I need to open the app. I need to get into my account. Internet connection probably is slow. And I see the person in front of me in the line needing 3 minutes for getting the payment done through the app, just collecting a few points, while my payment with the card is done in 5 seconds, right? I just take it out. And so where's the convenience at that point?
Yeah, interesting. Change topics a little bit. A trend we're seeing is that marketing is now increasingly in control of the user experience. So historically, IT organizations were the only ones responsible for making changes. So if you're a marketer and you want to change out the hero image, you got to ticket IT and wait for the next build and see how it takes forever. Are you seeing marketing actually take control, and how are they doing it?
Absolutely seeing it. In many of our larger accounts, marketing has completely taken over, the rollout and the new versioning of sites, especially when the opportunity exists that it's a headless experience. When the marketing component, the content component of the experience is driving the customer relationship and experience, it absolutely is being driven by the marketing folks. And the way they're doing it is, frankly, by some of the things we talked about earlier, whether it be unplatforming, whether it be going to a headless architecture, whether it be going to microservices, just giving them the flexibility to be able to do it. And to be honest, I think the other thing that it enables them to do is, one thing we haven't talked about really is data. We could spend a whole hour on that topic. But from a marketing perspective, now that those folks have a better data experience and a better knowledge of what that customer's data is, they should be the ones controlling that experience. They should be driving what an individual customer is seeing, what's being driven by weather in the Northeast or shortage of product in one of their DCs. So I think it has to be the case, and we're absolutely seeing that. I would say more than half of our clients are controlled there now.
No, that's great. It's such a big trend, and I'm really happy to be seeing it as well. And I think it results in a much better experience for the customers, because anytime you have to cross organizational boundaries within an enterprise, you lose things, you add delays. It's just a mess. So I'm glad you're seeing that as well, and it corroborates what we're seeing as well.
I think we could keep that on for at least more than an hour, but actually we're running out of time now. Maybe therefore one last question on that. So looking forward now to 2018, we're still quite early in the year. Is there anything that you see coming up? What is a big topic that you are focusing on, for example, with SapientRazorfish or personally on technology, on retail commerce that you see important for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that I just touched on is the idea of data. I mean, I think it is, I'm telling our customers, forget the term personalization. Personalization just, if you're only thinking about personalization now, you're too far behind. You need to be thinking about individualization. You need to know that individual and what their experience is, what they've done in the store, what they've done online, and what the new platforms and the new technologies have enabled them to enable our customers to do is really take advantage of that data. So I think, we've talked for years about the idea of personalization being the differentiator. I think now people actually have the data to take advantage of it. I'll tell my real quick story that from a personalization perspective, one of our clients I mentioned was a pet company. I was sitting with somebody that worked there, and I actually got a text from that company. I have 3 cats, and it was offering me a chicken coop. And I held it over to him, and I said, "Why do you think I got this personalized message that I might be interested in a chicken coop?"
Well, maybe everybody that has 3 cats.
So came back, looked at it, and the answer was, "Oh, well, you were in a rural zip code." So the only piece of data we used about it, even though you use a loyalty card every time you walk in the store, you shop online constantly, you have recurring orders for cat food and cat litter and all those things, that you were rural. So
which is so ironic because it's the urban farmers who are getting the chicken coops, not the rural farmers.
So it is all about how do you leverage the right data, not just data in general. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, no, I was glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Hope we can repeat it latest in a year, similar kind of setup. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.